Shipping, billing, admin, payroll, marketing. You're managing all the things, so why waste time sending important documents the old-fashioned way? Mail and ship when you want, how you want with Stamps.com. Print postage on demand 24/7 and schedule pickups from your office or home. Save up to 90% with automated rate shopping. That's why over 1 million small businesses trust Stamps.com. Go to Stamps.com and use code PODCAST to try Stamps.com risk-free for 60 days.
This is episode 357 of That Shakespeare Life. Just like the work of William Shakespeare, That Shakespeare Life is powered by our patrons. Listeners just like you can support the work we do here, have a hand in the making of our show, and access special insider extras. Learn more at patreon.com/thatshakespearelife and stay tuned after the episode for even more details.
Hi, I'm Catherine Loomis, author of The Death of Elizabeth I, Remembering and Reconstructing the Virgin Queen. Another great method for studying the life of William Shakespeare includes listening to this. It's That Shakespeare Life with my friend Cassidy Cash.
The best preserved elements of the archaeology are the brick foundations for the stage. It's quite a wide stage. It's about 14 meters wide. And it would have taken timber sort of superstructure on top of that brick footing. So the stage would have been about sort of 5.5 feet high. And to either side of the stage were side stage rooms. And there's doorways leading from those side stage rooms down under the stage.
Welcome to That Shakespeare Life with Cassidy Cash. Cassidy believes that if you desire to successfully learn or perform Shakespeare's plays, then understanding the real life and history of William Shakespeare himself is a must. That Shakespeare Life is the podcast that helps you go beyond the curtain of some of Shakespeare's most iconic works and explore the world of early modern England as Shakespeare would have lived it, learning from the writers, historians, and performers who know it best. And now, here's Cassidy.
The Curtain Theatre was built in 1577 in a section of London known as Shoreditch, constructed only about 200 yards, that's 600 feet for those of you here in the US, away from the theatre, which is the building James and Richard Burbage built as the first purpose-built theatre in London. For context, this distance is a half a city block in Manhattan and a little less than one city block in Chicago. In 1585, the Burbages took advantage of this close proximity and struck a deal with the owner of the Curtain to use it as a second performance venue. From 1597 to 1599, the Curtain was home to the Lord Chamberlain's men and saw the staging of some of Shakespeare's most famous plays, including Romeo and Juliet, Henry IV, Part 1 and 2. The Curtain also staged contemporary plays by John Marston and even one production of Ben Jonson's named Every Man in His Humour in 1598, which is a significant production for Shakespeare history since William Shakespeare was listed as a member of the cast, making the Curtain Theatre a place we know Shakespeare himself would have performed. There are no records of the Curtain after 1627, so historians are unclear what happened to cause the theater space to be closed down, but a recent development of a square in Shoreditch is bringing the Curtain back to life by having uncovered remains of the Curtain Theatre that have not only been preserved, but are now being showcased as the new Museum of Shakespeare in London. This museum will allow patrons to literally stand where Shakespeare once stood. Here today to share with us the details behind the dig and how you can visit the Museum of Shakespeare is our guest and lead archaeologist for the excavation with the Museum of London Archaeology, Heather Knight. Heather Knight is an archaeologist with Museum of London Archaeology and led the archaeological excavation on the site of the Boar's Head Playhouse in Whitechapel and the sites of the Theatre and the Curtain Playhouse in Shoreditch. The Theatre and the Curtain are two of London's earliest playhouses where Shakespeare performed in the 1590s. Heather is a fellow of the Society of Antiquaries of London, and you can find out more about her work as well as information on the Curtain Theatre dig in the show notes for today's episode. Before we get into our conversation, I want to let you know that there is bonus history content available in the patrons area of our show notes today. The bonus content includes images from the Curtain excavation, historical images of the original Curtain Theatre, printable illustrated maps of where the Curtain was located in London, and more information on the work being done to present this history to the public. All of the bonus content for this week can be found at CassidyCash.com/episode 357. Look for the detailed show notes banner and click on the Patreon button to unlock all the extras. Again, that URL is CassidyCash.com/episode 357. And now let's dive into the history. Hello, Heather. So nice to have you here at That Shakespeare Life.
Hello. How are you?
I am doing well, and I'm excited to hear about your project. At the excavation site, a section of brick walls was discovered that were determined to be the foundation of the Curtain Theatre. Heather, for those of us that are not archaeologists, tell us about how you determined this from the few bricks that were there. How did you know it was the stage of the curtain and not some other 1,000 things that a couple of bricks might have been?
That's a very good point. We started work on the project in 2011, so quite a while ago. And the reason we were digging on the site was the landowner had a big brown plaque on the wall that says, this is likely to be, somewhere near this site stood the Curtain Playhouse. So we did some trial excavation. This was back in 2011 to basically see if any archaeology survived on the site. And yes, we found some walls and we found gravel surfaces, and they were of the right date and doing the right kind of thing for us to think, we might have a playhouse.
Once you knew it was the foundation of a theater, how did you determine it was the curtain specifically?
Well, we actually did the full excavation in 2016. And it was at that point we really understood that this was the curtain and that it was a really interesting building. And it's the things we find associated with those walls and those surfaces that really tell us we've got a playhouse. So it's the things that playgoers left behind. So broken fragments of wine flasks and beads from their clothing and food like oyster shells and their clay tobacco pipes. So it's all that kind of material culture that kind of said, yes, we have a playhouse. And given its location, it kind of had to be the curtain.
There is a 1599 image called A View of London that shows what's believed to be the Curtain Theatre. While there's been research done that suggests that image may actually depict the theatre in Shoreditch, the point with bringing this up is that the image represents a long-held belief about the shape of the Curtain Theatre, which has been debunked by recent excavation Heather's team has performed. Heather, tell us about what was believed about the curtain's shape and how your dig uncovered a different reality.
Okay, I know exactly the panorama you're talking about. I look at it often. I have a copy of it on my wall. And yes, there is a polygonal building with a flag on the top. And given the date of the panorama, everybody assumed that it had to be the curtain because the theatre was demolished in sort of 1598 and the panorama was produced in around 1600. And therefore, it had to be the curtain. And at that point, we had nothing to say that the curtain was anything but polygonal. We knew it was 3 stories high. We knew it had a thatched roof. We knew it was made of timber. They're from sort of contemporary accounts, but we had nothing to actually say what the shape of the building looked like. And so when we started digging the site and we found we didn't have a polygonal structure, we had a playhouse, but it wasn't a polygonal one. We kind of stopped and thought, okay, well, what kind of parallels have we got for this building? And there's a brilliant building in Spain, in Almagro. And it's virtually a carbon copy of the curtain. And so we went back and we were looking again at that panorama. And if you look at it, on the right, to the right of the round-looking building, there's another building with a flag on it. And that is very likely the curtain. And so that polygonal structure is the only image we have of the theatre.
And I'll mention for listeners that may not be familiar, the flag being on top was important because a flag would be flown at a theater to indicate what kind of play was being performed. We talk about that more on other episodes of That Shakespeare Life, so I'll link you to that if you're unfamiliar with the flag symbology there. Heather, does this mean that not all early modern theaters had the same shape? Would they have, I think because the curtain and the globe were similar, that was my expectation. And then it seems that they weren't. So would they have been varied?
Oh, they come in all shapes and sizes. We think about, we've got the small indoor theatres like the Blackfriars and Salisbury Court. We have city inns, which are playing spaces. And we have polygonal buildings like the Theatre and the Globe. And then we have square and rectangular buildings like the Fortune, like the Bull's Head, like the Red Lion, and like the Curtain. So yeah, all shapes and sizes.
What other aspects of the theater's shape did you discover? Were there things like tunnels?
Oh, not tunnels exactly. What we have is the archaeology, the best preserved elements of the archaeology are the brick foundations for the stage. It's quite a wide stage. It's about 14 meters wide. And it would have taken timber sort of superstructure on top of that brick footing. So the stage would have been about sort of, 5.5 feet high. And to either side of the stage were side stage rooms. And there's doorways leading from those side stage rooms down under the stage. So we get a really kind of dynamic playing space. So you can move from one side of the stage to the other without being seen. You can pop up one side, reappear the other. I think that's really exciting.
That is fun to think about how they had pulled together what we would call movie magic today or theater magic. That's exciting. How much of the original theater structure actually survives? And explain for the uninitiated what the galleries that were discovered actually means.
Okay. But as I said, most of the building was timber, and the playhouse closed in around 1627. And the timber structure, it survived for a little while after, but was taken down in the mid sort of 17th century. So what remains is the brick foundations for the stage. Imagine like a masonry sort of shoebox is what we've got. And then we've got rooms either side of the stage, and we have the solid stone floors within those side stage rooms. We also have the gravel surfaces under the stage, and more importantly, the gravel surface where the audience was standing, both inside the playhouse and a gravel surface outside the playhouse that acts a bit like a foyer does in a modern theatre, I guess. It's where people were mixing and mingling and hanging out with their friends and having a drink. Evidence for the galleries themselves, as I say, that would have been, we had wall-to-wall standing at ground level. So it's very much like this theatre in Spain, the Almagro, which still exists. So well worth checking out. And so we have wall-to-wall standing at ground level and standing space, not necessarily seating space, but standing space in the two galleries above. So it's a sort of a railed space where you can stand and watch what's going on below.
So how do we know that Shakespeare's men performed at this location, and what productions were staged there?
Okay. Theatre historians, I think working particularly in the 19th century, had nailed down a kind of where the playhouses were. And historians working in the 20th century and 21st century are really starting to put together chronologies for playing companies. So we know the Chamberlain's men were performing at the Curtain. And we have we're beginning to get this kind of chronology of the plays that they in their repertoire. So we have plays like Romeo and Juliet, Henry V, Merry Wives of Windsor, anything sort of Shakespearean that's pre-1600, could well have been performed at the Curtain.
Why did Shakespeare's company stop performing there in 1599? And what ultimately happened that led to the destruction of the Curtain in the first place?
Okay, so we've got two playhouses, as we know from that panorama, quite close together. We've got the theatre and the Curtain. And Chamberlain's men were playing in both spaces. Their lease ran out on the theatre in the 1590s, and that building was demolished in 1598. And at that point, they are definitely only playing really at the Curtain. But while they're playing there, they're also building another building, which is the Globe on Bankside. And so when the Globe opens, this big, shiny new polygonal structure out on Bankside, they move from north of London to south of the Thames, and that's their new home. And that's when they leave the Curtain. But the Curtain doesn't end its life there. It carries on as a performance space until the mid-1620s. What happens at the end of its life is not dramatic. The fortune burns down at some point, the Globe burns down, the theatre's demolished. We have quite dramatic ends to buildings. But the Curtain just slowly disappears a little bit from the landscape. It's repurposed for a little while. So the building's still standing, but it's used for other things. And eventually the timber framing's taken down in the mid 17th century, and a set of tenements, sort of little cottages, a row of little cottages in effect, is built across it. And those cottages make use of the brick foundations of the stage, and they make use of those stone floors in those side stage rooms. And so that's why they're preserved, because they're incorporated into a later building.
How is the curtain excavation different from the excavations of the Globe and the theatre, which took place nearby?
It's not just those two sites we've dug. We've actually dug about 7, I think, playhouse sites in London now.
What a wonderful time to be alive. Like, we're finding...
There is so many good things coming together right now. It's just really, really super exciting time. So we have dug quite a bit of the Rose on Bankside, a very small part of the Globe on Bankside. The Hope was also dug on Bankside. That was sort of back in about 2000. Since then, we've dug the theatre, the Curtain. Another company, ASE, dug the Red Lion in Stepney, and we've also dug the Boar's Head in Whitechapel. So we've got a lot of sites to look at, but preservation-wise, it's the Curtain. The Curtain is the best one because the level of preservation, because how it ended its life, and the fact that it was incorporated into other structures, it wasn't demolished to ground level, it didn't burn down, it didn't nothing, So we've actually got more physical remains of that building than we have of any other.
So what are the plans to preserve this history now that you've found it?
Okay, well, the government has given it the status of a scheduled monument, which is the highest level of protection the government can give it. So it's in good company. It joins the Globe, it joins the Rose, it joins the theatre in that status. And it will become the centrepiece of a new museum space, which will be the Museum of Shakespeare. It's a really exciting plans. Mola doesn't actually, we're a company I work for, isn't actually contributing as such to those plans, but we are standing by with bated breath for opening night. So hopefully at the end of 2025, that museum will be up and running.
What a wonderful thing to look forward to throughout the year of 2025. I know I will be waiting with bated breath as well to see the Museum of Shakespeare come to life. And I can't believe the opportunity that this offers to get to stand where Shakespeare himself actually would have performed, and his men would have been there, and his plays, and just what a beautiful piece of history. It's very exciting to think that it's all there to go and see. So
yeah, well, one of the interesting designs that they've incorporated into the new museum space is a steel frame that sits over the archaeology. It doesn't touch the archaeology, it sits over it, and that carries a glass stage. And that glass stage means you can see the archaeology that's below your feet, but you're standing at the same level as the original stage. So you can stand in the same space, which saw performances of Romeo and Juliet.
That is fantastic. I mean, as from a history tourist level, it's thrilling to get to do that. But from a research level, that's exciting to be able to stand at the same level and sort of make observations about what the plays would have been like in that space. To be able to have that physical reality inform your research is exciting as well. We're looking forward to seeing that come to life. And I know that we are really excited to learn more about the Curtain Theatre and the View of London panorama and all of these bits of history that you've introduced to us today. If we are new to the history of this theatre and want to learn more, what are your recommendations about where we should begin?
Well, archaeology-wise, I think you can't go far wrong with checking out mola.org.uk, which is my company's website. And if you go to the discovery section, you can see all the kind of projects that we're involved in currently and past projects, including a few theatres that we've dug along the way. And online resources, beforeshakespeare.com. Brilliant. Before Shakespeare was a fantastic project. Kind of ask the question, what happened? What was happening in London before Shakespeare arrived? How did playhouses come into being? And that's the online content of that project. Dr. Callan Davies has written a brilliant book, What is a Playhouse? That's a very, very simple question, but by goodness, what a range. And he really explores why we've got these different playing spaces, what happens in these different playing spaces, and what the playing experience is in those spaces. So excellent book.
These are excellent resources, and we will place direct links to all of these in the show notes for today's episode. So stay tuned for the URL for where to find those. And Callan Davies has actually been a guest on That Shakespeare Life to talk about his book on playhouses. So we'll link you to that episode as well, so you can hear directly from Callan some of the research into that history. Now, Heather, we ask everyone this next question here at That Shakespeare Life, and that's, what's the one book you would take with you on a deserted island? My friends in England tell me I'm supposed to allow you the complete works of Shakespeare and a copy of the Bible, and Heather has told me this week that I am also supposed to allow you a luxury item on your desert island trip, so please share that with us as well.
Well, the book, I had a long think about the book. And I think it's got to be John Stow's Survey of London, which he published in 1598. There were other editions published in the 17th century as well. And it's a real detailed tour of the city of London, a very accurate one, actually. And it provides us with a kind of unique first-hand account of buildings, sort of social conditions and life in London. So while I'm sitting there in the under the scorching sun, waiting to be rescued, I can take myself on a little wander around the city of the 16th century. So yeah, it'd be John Stow's Survey of London.
I think that's a good choice.
And my luxury item is going to be something really boring. Actually, I think I'm going to go for a notepad and a pen, because I have a distinct feeling I wouldn't have been the first person on this desert island. So while I'm waiting to be rescued, I might as well do some archaeology while I'm there, and I can go and take some notes of anything that I find. So that's what I'd do.
How you know you love what you do when you're stranded on a deserted island, and that's how you want to spend your time.
That would be my luxury. I know.
That would be your luxury. I know. I think that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Heather Knight. Well, what's next for you? What are you working on now that you're excited about?
Well, after spending quite a while digging the site of the Boar's Head, many years digging the site of the Curtain and the theatre, it's about time I do something with all that data. So I'm in the post-excavation analysis phase, where we actually make sense of all that data. And then once I've made sense of it, I can then publish it so everybody else can hopefully see in detail what we've been doing over the last 17 years.
Well, I know I will be thrilled to see that come to fruition. I'm excited about the work that you've been doing, and we thank you so much for being here to share this history with us and to help us understand the Curtain and that part of Shakespeare's history just this much better. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you. It's been fun.
The list of resources and recommendations we've been talking about today, along with more information on our guests and how you can follow Heather's work, is available in the show notes for today's episode. Find all these things at CassidyCash.com/episode 357. That's CassidyCash.com/EP357. And don't forget that while you're on the show notes page, you can click the Patreon button to log in or join us as a patron to unlock the bonus content. If you love the history you learn about here on the show and would like to go one step further to actually try out some of the history we talk about here on the podcast, then you will love Experience Shakespeare. Inside Experience Shakespeare on Patreon, we offer games, recipes, and crafts straight from the life of William Shakespeare that you can do at home. Each activity kit walks you through lesson plans, history guides, and activity suggestions that show you how you can complete this activity at home or in your classroom. If that sounds like fun to you, then you will love Experience Shakespeare. Sign up today at patreon.com/thatshakespearelife. Click on Experience Shakespeare to try out a piece of Shakespeare's history for yourself. That Shakespeare Life is researched and produced by me, Cassidy Cash. Our audio engineer is Gary Mayholm. That's it for this week. Thank you for listening. I'm Cassidy Cash, and I hope you learned something new about the Bard. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to That Shakespeare Life. As always, the best conversations happen after the episode over at CassidyCash.com. Become a part of a vibrant Shakespeare conversation by adding your voice over at the website. Until next time, remember, when you want to know William Shakespeare, you have to go behind the curtain and into That Shakespeare Life.